Hi, I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise. I'm so glad you're joining me today. I want to share some fat quarter quilt ideas with you. I love fat quarters, and that's my pre-cut of choice and what I buy when I go shopping. And I really get excited about putting a lot of fat quarters together. And you'll notice in this quilt behind me, there's a lot of different colors in this quilt. And I have probably close to 50 fat quarters right now in this particular quilt. It's called an asymmetrical rail fence, and asymmetrical because it's not exactly set on a regular square pattern like most rail fences are, but that gives us an opportunity to really stack in a lot of different fabrics and use the rail as our constant denominator, our focal point that sort of detracts from too much busyness in the quilt and brings everything together into a beautiful, beautiful design. If you're not a fat quarter collector, this also works great for charm squares. This is made with 5-inch blocks, so I'll take my fat quarters and cut a few blocks out of each, and then we're started to get going on the quilt. So whether you collect fat quarters or charms or buy yardage, this quilt is going to be a quick finish for you. So let me show you how to put this together. Pulling fabric together for a new quilt is probably my favorite part of quilting. I absolutely love pulling the fabrics together, getting the colors, the prints, the graphics, just everything coming together is exciting to me, and I get really revved up about the quilt that I'm going to make. Wow, we certainly have the full spectrum of colors here. These are going to work great together. I'm really excited. So this is what I call a fat quarter stash buster. We have 50 or pieces of 50 different fat quarters in this group of fabric, and I think they're going to look wonderfully together. We're making a rail fence. It's actually an asymmetrical rail fence, but the first thing we need to do with all our 5-inch charms is divide them into thirds. We're going to use 3 strips of fabric in each rail, and so I want to divide these up into 3 different groups. Then once I do that, we'll piece them, and then we'll add a side rail, which is what makes this asymmetrical. So let me put this together and show you how that's going to work. So right here are the 72 blocks that we're going to use to make our rail fence blocks for the baby quilt. There's 24 in each pile. Now the first step is we're going to combine our squares and sew them together. So step 1, let's get our pairs matched up and sew a 1/4-inch seam down both sides. And then once you're finished, we're going to take the next step from there. And we have 24 pairs all sewn together with a 1/4-inch seam. And then the next step is to cut this in half. So it's a 5-inch square. We are going to cut it right at 2.5 inches. We have this stack of 24 cut in half so that we now have 48. Because remember, we had 24 pairs, we cut them in half, and we have 48. So these 48 strips are going to be sewn to each of these. And so we're just going to take each pair, add one of these narrower strips, and right there, do a 1/4-inch seam, and there you have it. Let's go ahead and get all these matched up and sewn, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to finish the block, and we're that much closer to get the quilt put together. We have some beautiful colors coming together here. Look at all these, bright and bold, and they're pairing up well, looking great next to each other. This is going to make a great quilt. Now, you'll notice what we have here is a rectangle, but in order to make the rail fence block work, we need to create a square. And so by adding a rail on this side, which is where it gets its name, the asymmetrical rail fence, then we have our square, and that's going to create the rail throughout our quilt. And by using a strong contrast like we are here with white, the rail is going to be very dominant. You can certainly choose, maybe you do a navy blue or you do a green. If you don't have the rail in a continuous color, it's not going to be very prevalent, very visible. it'll be more of like a scrappy quilt, which is fine, but you're not going to get that prominent rail look, that pattern that we're going for. With these blocks sewn together, our quilt is really starting to take shape. Can you see how this pattern is going? I need to put this in the right direction. Then when you press, all of them are going to be pressed to the white stripe so that we eliminate any bulk on this seam here for when we're quilting. Now, you can see that we're getting the beginning of what our rail fence is going to look like. So it's the white rail, and we're going to do 4 blocks like this. So when the next block comes over here, see how this just continues. So at this point, we want to make 4 stacks, 4 piles of your fabric. And each one will have 12 pieces, 12 blocks in it. And the reason we're going to do this is we're going to create a 4 patch. And so 4 blocks together, and then we'll put the quilt top together with those 4 patches. It just goes easier. You're less apt to make a mistake on the pattern and turn something the wrong direction, which I have done. It's very easy to do. Because a lot of times when you do a rail fence, you're going to do this row repeatedly, and then you're going to come down here and you're going to do this row repeatedly and then sew the 2 rows together. What I prefer doing, let's get this the right way here, what I prefer doing is creating a 4 patch because I can always tell that my pattern is correct. Every block will look exactly the same. And if something doesn't look right, I'm going to catch it before I'm putting the final quilt top together. And for me, that's a time saver. It double checks, it helps me look for mistakes ahead of time before it happens, before it's too late to try and change the piece around. Because once the quilt top is made, it's not easy to go back and just flip one block. So let me show you what it's going to look like. Here's your finished block. The first thing you're going to do is sew a seam here and here, and then put those 2 together. So this seam is sewn first, then this seam, and then you put the 2 together and do a long seam across. This 4 patch method really solves a lot of the problems that we can be facing as we're putting this quilt top together. There's a lot of colors to be balancing, a lot of colors to be working with, and putting this 4 patch together is going to make your life a whole lot easier. So take this, your 48, divide them into 4 stacks of 12, kind of balance them by color. That way you're going to be less apt to sew 2 reds or 2 bright yellows in one block. Not that that's a problem, but I'd rather have some of the yellows and reds throughout the whole quilt top than maybe stuck up in one corner. And that's more what I look for when I'm putting a quilt top together. So then we will have 12 of these blocks, and our quilt will be 3 across and 4 down. And that's going to go together very, very quickly. So we are just about there. Go ahead and get your piles made and start making your finishing blocks here, your 4 patches, and we're going to get this quilt put together before you know it. With your 12 4-patch blocks completed, now just lay them out in a manner that you like in a 3 by 4 layout. So you'll have 3 blocks across the top and 4 across the side for a total of 12. And see that rail fence just jump right out at you. Isn't it beautiful the way it lays out together? Let me show you one other picture of this quilt. Here's a close-up of the quilt finished, hanging on the wall and just sort of draped and flowy. I think it looks beautiful. I love all those colors together, and they make such a great contrast and a beautiful bright quilt that everyone will love. So I hope you have an opportunity to make this quilt soon. And again, because it's made out of charms and it's a simple 6-inch square, you can make this quilt any size you want. So have fun with it, and I hope to see a picture of your quilt soon.